Danny had been working the overnight shift at Miller's 24-hour diner for almost a year now. The routine was always the same: clean the counters, refill the coffee pots, wait for the occasional late-night trucker or drifter to stumble in. But this night was different. At 2:37 a.m., just as Danny was wiping down the counter, the bell above the door jingled. He looked up, expecting to see a tired traveler or a college kid looking for greasy food after a night out. Instead, it was him. A tall man in a black overcoat stepped inside. His face was nondescript, almost like it was missing detail, as if the dim fluorescent lights refused to fully reveal him. He moved with a strange stillness. His footsteps should have echoed on the diner's tile floor, but they didn't. Danny swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Hey there, what can I get you?" The man didn't answer at first. He just stared, his eyes dark pools that reflected nothing. Then, after a long, uncomfortable silence, he slid into the booth in the farthest corner of the diner. Danny's stomach churned, because the truth was, he had seen this man before. Every night for the past 3 weeks, at the exact same time, in the exact same seat. But here's where things got weird. No one else ever seemed to notice him. Like clockwork, the man always ordered the same thing: black coffee, a slice of cherry pie, no sugar, no cream. And like clockwork, he never ate it. He would sit, staring ahead, motionless, until exactly 3:13 a.m. Then, without a word, he would stand, leave a single crisp $5 bill, and walk out the door. Danny had asked his co-workers about him. None of them remembered ever seeing him. Even the security footage showed nothing. One night, Danny tried to be brave. He asked, "Hey man, do you need anything else?" The man slowly turned his head toward him. It was the first time he had ever made direct eye contact. And then, in a voice that sounded too deep, too hollow, the man whispered, "Almost time." Danny's breath hitched. Time for what? The man's thin lips curled into what might have been a smile. But he didn't answer. Tonight was different. It was March 14th. The night shift had been quieter than usual. Even the usual late-night truckers hadn't come in. It felt like the whole world had gone still. Danny watched the door, waiting. 2:37 a.m. The bell jingled. The man stepped inside, but this time something was wrong. His overcoat was damp, like he had been standing in the rain, but there was no rain outside. His skin was paler than before, almost gray, and when he walked to his booth, he left no reflection in the diner's glass windows. Danny's pulse pounded as he approached the table. His hands trembled as he poured the usual cup of black coffee. But before he could set it down, the man grabbed his wrist. The touch was ice cold, freezing like something dead. Danny's vision blurred, his ears filled with a deafening ringing sound. And then, a voice whispering in his ear, "It's time." The diner flickered. For a brief moment, the world around Danny shifted. The walls cracked, the tiles warped, the fluorescent lights buzzed like they were screaming. And then he saw them, the others. Dozens of shadowy figures sitting in the booths, their faces twisted in silent screams. Their eyes black voids, their mouths open, but no sound coming out. Danny's own voice was trapped in his throat. His knees buckled as he fell back, knocking over the coffee cup. The scalding liquid splashed onto the floor, but he felt nothing. The figures watched him, and then Danny realized they weren't looking at him. They were looking past him, to the man in the overcoat. He was standing now, smiling, and in that moment, Danny understood. The man wasn't a customer. He was the collector. The diner snapped back to normal. The flickering stopped. The whispers faded. The figures were gone. Danny gasped, looking around wildly. The only sound was the dripping coffee from the counter, and the man was gone. Danny scrambled to his feet and ran to the door. He swung it open, looking out into the night. The street was empty. No cars, no footsteps, nothing. But then his gaze dropped to the ground outside the door. There, resting in a perfectly dry spot, was a single crisp $5 bill, and it had his name written on it. Danny's stomach twisted, because he never told the man his name. And worse, when he turned back to the diner's window, his own reflection was missing. If you ever work the night shift, pay attention to the customers who never eat, never speak, and never leave a shadow. Because one night, it might be you they're waiting for. And when the clock strikes 3:13, it's time. The hospital basement. Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing, places where the sick recover, where life is saved. But anyone who has ever worked the night shift in a hospital knows the truth. Hospitals are haunted. Maybe it's because so many people die there. Maybe it's because grief and suffering soak into the walls like a stain that never fades. Or maybe some patients never really leave. It started as a routine shift. Lena Carter, a third-year nurse, was finishing her rounds at St. Augustine Medical Center, a hospital with a long history. Opened in the 1800s, it had been expanded multiple times over the years. Some wings had been abandoned, left to decay. And then there was the basement, a place no one talked about. 3:04 a.m., Lena was exhausted. She had just finished checking vitals on a row of sleeping patients and was heading back to the break room for a quick coffee. She stepped into the staff elevator, pressed the button for the second floor, and watched in confusion as the doors slid shut without moving. The elevator jolted. The light above the buttons flickered, and then it started moving down. Lena frowned. Nobody had pressed the basement button. She reached for the emergency stop, but before she could press it, the elevator lurched to a halt. The door slid open, revealing a long, dark hallway. A hallway that shouldn't have been there. Every hospital worker knew the official basement was for maintenance and storage. Some old medical records, spare beds, broken equipment. But this wasn't that basement. The walls were old, cracked tile, yellowed with age. The air smelled of mold and something metallic like blood. Fluorescent lights buzzed above her, flickering erratically. The hallway stretched into the distance, with ruined doors lining both sides, rusted plaques hanging crookedly on each one. The worst part? The silence. Hospitals are never truly silent. There's always the hum of machines, the distant chatter of nurses, the beeping of monitors. But here, nothing. The air was heavy, stagnant, as if the place had been sealed off from time itself. Lena's pulse quickened. This wasn't right. She turned back toward the elevator, only to find the doors had closed. And when she pressed the button, it didn't respond. That's when she noticed something else. The floor number display above the doors was completely blank. No numbers, no movement, like the elevator had never existed at all. A chill crawled down Lena's spine. She turned, scanning the hallway. One of the room doors, room 312, stood slightly ajar. From inside, she swore she heard breathing. Shallow, labored, like someone dying. Lena hesitated. Every instinct screamed to her to get back in the elevator, to leave, to forget she ever saw this place. But she was a nurse. If someone was suffering, she couldn't ignore them. Slowly, she stepped toward the door, pushing it open. Inside was a hospital bed. The sheets were yellowed with age, the mattress thin. The machines beside it were outdated, bulky monitors with flickering screens, their cables frayed. And lying on the bed, a patient, an elderly man, his skin gray, his face sunken. He was hooked up to an IV bag filled with black liquid. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The monitors beside him were on, but there was no power source, no plugs. This shouldn't be possible. And then he opened his eyes, his gaze locked onto hers. And in a voice so dry it sounded like paper crumbling, he whispered, "Help me." Lena stumbled back, knocking over a rusted IV stand. The noise echoed through the empty hallway. The patient slowly turned his head toward her, his pupils too large, swallowing the whites of his eyes. Then from outside the room, a second voice, a woman. "Nurse, please. I need my medicine." Lena's blood turned to ice. There were more of them. She stepped back into the hallway, and every door in the corridor creaked open. Shadows shifted behind the doorways. Shapes moved in the dim light. And then the whispering started. Dozens of voices, weak, desperate, calling out to her. "Please help us. Nurse, it hurts. We've been here so long." Somewhere down the corridor, a buzzer sounded, a long, wailing tone like a flat line. Lena's breath came in gasps. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She turned and ran. She sprinted back toward the elevator, her shoes slapping against the old tile. She slammed the button once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Behind her, the whispers grew louder. The patients were getting closer. Then, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open. Lena didn't hesitate. She threw herself inside, hammering the second-floor button over and over. The doors began to close. And then a hand shot through the gap. A withered, bony hand. Gray skin stretched tight over long, claw-like fingers. The nails were blackened, cracked, dripping with something thick and dark. Lena screamed. The doors slammed shut, severing the hand at the wrist. The limb dropped to the floor, but before she could react, it melted into the tiles, vanishing. The elevator lurched upward. Lena collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. Ding! The doors opened to the second floor. She stumbled out, the bright fluorescent lights of the normal hospital blinding after the darkness below. Everything was normal. The nurse's station was occupied. Machines beeped. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Like nothing had happened. But when she turned back to the elevator, the B button was gone, as if the basement had never existed. Lena never spoke about that night. She transferred hospitals a month later, unable to shake the feeling that something was still watching her. Years later, she found an old newspaper article about St. Augustine Medical Center. Decades ago, there had been an underground ward. It was shut down in 1954 due to neglect, malpractice, and mysterious patient disappearances. Patients were left to rot when the ward was sealed off. They were never moved. And when Lena checked the patient records for room 312, she found the name of the old man she had seen. He had died in 1953. But every night at 3:04 a.m., his monitor still flickers on, still waiting, still begging for help. If you ever take the night shift in a hospital, never go to the basement, because some patients never leave. And one night, they might call your name. Sam hated working nights. Being a security guard in a half-abandoned office building wasn't exactly thrilling. Most nights, the only thing that broke the silence was the occasional elevator hum or the flickering of a dying hallway light. Tonight, though, something was different. At 2:06 a.m., the security phone rang. The old landline never rang, not unless someone from inside the building called. Sam stared at the glowing extension number. 13th floor. That was impossible, because the 13th floor was empty. Had been for the past 5 years. Sam lifted the receiver. Security office. At first, there was only static. Then a whisper. Faint. Desperate. Help me. Sam's stomach tightened. Who is this? The line went dead. A soft click. Then silence. Sam's gut told him to ignore it. It was probably a prank. Except, who could be pranking him? No one had been assigned to the 13th floor for years. The power was shut off. The office space was abandoned. Sam grabbed his flashlight and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, the air in the tiny metal box felt colder. The button panel flickered, and when Sam reached out to press 13, it was already lit, like someone had pressed it first. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and Sam stepped into the dark. The 13th floor was silent. Cubicles stood in neat rows, covered in dust. The air smelled of mildew and old carpet. Sam clicked on his flashlight. The beam swept across abandoned desks, toppled chairs, and then a phone ringing from a desk just ahead. Sam's throat tightened. He approached slowly. The landline on the desk blinked, flashing red. He picked up the receiver. Help me. A whisper, right into his ear. Sam's blood ran cold. Who are you? The line went dead. He exhaled, turning away, and froze. The office windows reflected the darkness behind him, and in the reflection, a figure stood by the cubicles, motionless, watching. Sam spun around, but the room was empty. The feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. Something was wrong with this floor. Sam shone his flashlight around, and then a sound, soft, like metal scraping against metal. Sam followed it to a row of filing cabinets. One of the drawers was slightly open. A small label, yellow with age. Employee Incident Reports, 2018. Sam hesitated, then pulled the drawer open. The files inside were covered in dust, but one folder sat on top, clean, like someone had placed it there recently. Sam lifted the folder and read the name on the tab. His breath hitched. Employee. Anna Carter. Status. Deceased. Sam flipped the file open. Inside, a report. A young woman, Anna Carter, had worked as a receptionist on the 13th floor. In 2018, she had fallen down the elevator shaft. Accident. Case closed. But there was a handwritten note in the margins. Witnesses heard her screaming for help. After the fall, Sam's fingers tightened on the paper. This wasn't an accident. She had been trapped, alone, dying in the dark, calling for someone, anyone, to hear her. And now, 5 years later, she was still calling. A new sound echoed through the office. A ringing, not a phone. The elevator bell. Sam spun around. The elevator doors at the end of the hall slowly slid open. Inside, the control panel flickered. But it wasn't empty. A shape stood just beyond the threshold. A woman. Long, dark hair. Pale, lifeless eyes. She lifted a hand and pointed straight at Sam. The phone at the desk rang again. Sam's heart pounded. He reached out with a shaking hand, lifted the receiver, and before he could speak, "You should have come sooner." A rush of cold air. Sam stumbled backward. The office around him flickered, like a bad signal on an old TV. The cubicles disappeared. The desks vanished. And suddenly, he was standing at the edge of the elevator shaft. No floor beneath him, only darkness below. A horrible, sickening drop. And just before he fell, a hand grabbed his arm, pulled him back. The world snapped back to normal. The office returned, and he was alone. The elevator doors were shut. The phone was silent. The ghost was gone. Sam didn't sleep when his shift ended. He spent the morning searching for Anna Carter's family. There was nothing. No relatives. No burial record. No obituary. As if she had been forgotten. Just like the 13th floor. That night, Sam sat at his desk. And at exactly 2:06 a.m., the security phone rang. The extension number flashed. 13th floor. Sam didn't answer, but he didn't hang up either. He just listened. And in the distant static beneath the white noise, a single, faint whisper, "Help me." Retail jobs can be dull. Long hours, repetitive tasks, and the occasional rude customer. But for Lisa Carter, a night shift worker at Everstyle department store, her job came with something far worse. The mannequins moved. At first, it was subtle, small shifts, barely noticeable. But soon she realized they were watching her. Lisa had only been working at Everstyle for a few weeks when she noticed something strange. Every morning before leaving her shift, she did a walk through the store, checking the aisles, tidying up, making sure nothing was out of place. And every morning, she passed by the display mannequins near the entrance. 6 of them. 3 male, 3 female. Stiff, unmoving. Until one night, as she counted the registers, she glanced toward the front and froze. One of the mannequins had turned its head, just slightly, a fraction of an inch, but enough that she knew it hadn't been like that before. She told herself it was her imagination. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she just remembered wrong. But then it happened again and again. One night, an arm shifted. Another time, a mannequin stood an inch closer to the glass than it had the night before. Lisa checked the security cameras, but the footage always showed nothing. No movement, no signs of anyone touching them. Still, she tried to ignore it. She needed the job. The pay was good. But then they started changing positions completely. It was a Friday night, just past 3 a.m., when Lisa saw it. She had just finished mopping the floors, making her way to the back stockroom. As she passed the front, she gave the mannequins a quick glance, like she always did. Except, one of them was gone. Lisa stopped cold. She counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There had always been 6. Her heart pounded. She turned, scanning the store. Nothing. Maybe someone moved it. Maybe another worker adjusted the display before leaving. But she was alone. The doors were locked. And then, a soft scuffing sound. From behind her, Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly. And there it was. The missing mannequin, standing in the aisle. Closer than before. Lisa's blood ran cold. The mannequin had changed. Before, it had been in the standard pose, arms at its sides, blank face tilted forward. Now, one arm was raised, fingers pointing directly at her. Lisa stumbled back, her heart hammering. This wasn't possible. The store was empty. No one else had keys. She needed to leave. Now, she turned, sprinting toward the break room, toward the exit door in the back. But the moment she reached the hallway, every single mannequin was there, blocking the door. Lisa screamed. The mannequins, all 6 of them, stood directly in front of her. She hadn't heard them move, hadn't seen them shift, but they were there. And worse, their heads were tilted toward her, like they were listening. Then, in the crushing silence, she heard it. A sound so soft, so faint, she almost didn't believe it at first. Whispering, low, faint, coming from every direction. Lisa clapped her hands over her ears, squeezing her eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't real. When she opened her eyes again, the mannequins were gone, just vanished. Lisa quit the next day. She didn't wait for an explanation, didn't tell her boss what happened. But before she left, she did one final thing. She checked the store's history. It turned out Everstyle wasn't always a department store. Decades ago, the building had been a wax museum, a place filled with life-size figures, some so eerily real that people swore they could see them breathe. The museum closed suddenly. The owner disappeared, and some of the exhibits, they were never recovered. Lisa never looked back, but sometimes when she passes an empty storefront window, she swears. She sees one of them, watching, waiting, still pointing. Working the graveyard shift at a gas station is supposed to be uneventful. Sure, you get a few weirdos, late-night travelers, exhausted truckers, and the occasional drifter who stares too long. But for Noah Carter, the worst part of his shift wasn't the customers. It was the shadow, the one that moved without a source, the one that appeared near the pumps after midnight, the one that watched. Noah had worked at Westfield Gas and Mart for about 6 months. It was a tiny station way out on Route 46, surrounded by nothing but highway and trees. His job was simple: restock the shelves, ring up the occasional customer, try not to fall asleep. But that night, the night everything changed, was different. It started just past 1 a.m. Noah was behind the counter, scrolling through his phone, when he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. He looked up, expecting to see a car pulling in. But the lot was empty, or almost empty, because near Pump 3, just beyond the glow of the overhead lights, there was a shadow. At first, Noah thought it was just a trick of a light. But then it moved. Not like a normal shadow. Not with the wind or the shifting of the lights. It slid against the pavement, as if it had weight, as if it was alive. A shiver ran down Noah's spine. He leaned closer to the window, trying to see what was casting it. There was nothing. No car. No person. Just a shadow. And it was growing longer, stretching toward the store. A sharp buzz filled the air. The store's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting the aisles into brief darkness. Noah's heart pounded. He reached for the phone, but before he could dial, the security monitor glitched. The cameras went black for half a second, then came back on. And when they did, the shadow was closer. Now, just outside the doors. And this time, it had a shape. Not just a blurry mass, but something resembling a person. Thin, stretched, featureless, standing perfectly still, watching. Noah forced a breath. It's just my imagination. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped toward the glass doors. The moment his foot hit the tile, knock, a slow, deliberate tap against the glass. Noah's stomach twisted. The doors were motion activated. They should have slid open, but they didn't. The shadow remained outside, knocking, softly, patiently, like it was waiting. Noah's hands trembled as he reached for the store's intercom phone. His manager, Dave, had always told him never to leave the store after midnight. If you see anything weird, just stay inside, no matter what. At the time, Noah thought it was a joke. Now, he wasn't so sure. He picked up the phone, dialing Dave's number. It rang and rang. Then, finally, he answered. Noah, what's wrong? His voice was sharp, alert, like he already knew something was happening. Noah swallowed. There's someone outside. A long silence. Then, in a low voice, Dave asked, is it standing still? Noah's breath hitched. Yeah. Did it knock? Noah's blood ran cold. How did you? Noah, listen to me. Whatever you do, do not open that door. Dave spoke quickly, his voice edged with panic. "It comes every few months. Same time, same place. It wants in, but it can't enter unless you let it." Noah stared at the shadow, his hands shaking. "Then what do I do?" A pause. "Stay put. And whatever happens, don't look away." Noah kept his eyes locked on the shadow. His muscles burned. His breath came in shaky gasps. Outside, the gas station lights dimmed. The cameras flickered. And then, the shadow moved. Not toward the door. Not toward the pumps. But up. Stretching up the glass. Shifting along the ceiling. Moving across the roof. Until it vanished. Noah's stomach twisted. Where did it go? Then, the bulbs above him shattered. Darkness swallowed the store. And in the pitch black, something breathed behind him. Noah's body screamed to turn around. But Dave's voice echoed in his head. "Whatever happens, don't look away." So he didn't. He kept his gaze locked on the front door, even as the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps moved behind him. Even as cold fingers brushed the back of his neck. Even as a voice, not spoken, but felt, whispered into his mind. "Let me in." Noah's heart pounded against his ribs. The air around him grew thick, suffocating. The thing was waiting, but Noah wouldn't look. He couldn't. Seconds passed, then minutes, and then the lights flickered back on. Noah gasped, spinning around. The store was empty. The shadow was gone, and the only sign it had ever been there was a single black handprint on the glass. Noah quit the next day. He didn't ask Dave for details. Didn't want to know. But before he left, Dave told him one last thing. "If it ever finds you again, just remember the rule. Don't look away." There was something wrong with the warehouse. It wasn't just the usual creaks and groans of an old building settling. No, this was different. Alive. Ethan had worked the night shift at Lockwood Distribution Center for about 3 months. His job was simple. Scan incoming shipments. Stack inventory. Kill time until sunrise. But after midnight, when the world outside went still and the massive aisles of crates and pallets became a maze of shadows, he noticed it. The breathing. A deep, low exhalation. Like the warehouse itself had lungs. It started subtly. A soft whoosh of air. So faint Ethan barely noticed it. The first time it happened, he thought it was the ventilation system. Maybe an air duct releasing pressure. But when he checked, the vents were silent. Still, he brushed it off. Until it happened again. And again. Every night. Always around 3 a.m. A slow, deliberate inhale. Then an even slower exhale. Like something massive was asleep beneath the floorboards. Like the building was alive. Ethan tried to ignore it. But the more he listened, the worse it got. The breaths became deeper. Louder. And then they changed. At first, they were rhythmic. Controlled. But one night, as Ethan was stacking boxes, he heard something else. A shuddering gasp. Like something in pain. A broken, uneven inhale. Ethan froze. His eyes scanned the endless rows of towering shelves. The high steel beams. The dusty concrete floors. The warehouse was empty. It was just him, wasn't it? Then came the footsteps. Soft, barely audible. Somewhere behind him. He turned fast, but the aisles were empty. Only crates. Only silence. But when he walked forward, the sound followed. Not an echo. A second set of steps. Mimicking his own. Keeping pace. He moved faster. So did they. Until he stopped. And they didn't. Something rushed past him. A blur of motion in his peripheral vision. He spun around, heart hammering. Nothing. But now, the breathing had changed again. It was closer. Shallower. Like something was waiting. Ethan had been working in the warehouse long enough to know the layout. 12 aisles. All numbered. But that night, as he walked the floor, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A new aisle. One that wasn't supposed to be there. There, between aisles 6 and 7, a narrow gap. Too tight. Too dark. And at the end of it, a door. It was old. Wooden. Nothing like the warehouse's modern steel doors. Ethan's throat went dry. That door hadn't been there before. Had it? A cold breeze pushed past him, carrying the scent of damp earth. And then, the doorknob turned. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet didn't move. The door creaked open, just an inch. And from the darkness inside came the breath, a heavy, ragged exhalation, like something had been waiting for him. Ethan swallowed hard. "Hello." Silence. Then, a whisper. "You hear me now?" His stomach twisted. The breath came again, louder, closer. The air inside the hidden aisle shuddered, like a giant pair of lungs inhaling. Ethan turned and ran. He sprinted through the aisles, past crates and towering pallets. But as he reached the exit, the lights flickered, the breathing deepened. The whole building shuddered, like it was waking up. Boxes toppled, metal beams groaned, and beneath the floor, Ethan swore he heard it, a heartbeat. The warehouse was alive. Ethan never went back. He didn't explain, didn't tell his boss why he quit. But weeks later, he saw a news article. Warehouse worker disappears on night shift. Only his radio found. And in the security footage they showed, aisle 6 looked normal. Aisle 7 looked normal. But between them, that impossible aisle was there again. And just before the cameras cut to static, the door at the end of it creaked open. It started with a whisper. At first, just a faint crackle in the air, so quiet that James thought it was his imagination. But then, in the dead silence of the abandoned office, buried beneath the static of an old radio that wasn't plugged in, he heard it. His name. James. James had worked night shifts before, but nothing like this. Blackwell Tower had been empty for years. A 20-story office building shut down after a company scandal. The top floors had been sealed off, and the city never bothered demolishing it. Still, someone had to keep it from falling apart. James was that someone. His job was simple. Sweep the lower floors. Check for leaks. Keep trespassers out. Most nights were quiet. Just him and the distant hum of the city outside. But tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't alone. James had just finished mopping the lobby when he heard the sound. A faint, warbling crackle from upstairs. Like a radio picking up a weak signal. But that didn't make sense. The power was cut to the upper floors. He hesitated. Then, against his better judgment, he took the stairs. The 7th floor smelled like dust and old paper. Cubicles still stood untouched, as if the workers had vanished mid-shift. A coffee cup sat on a desk, its contents long-dried. Yellowed memos were still pinned to corkboards. And in the far corner of the room, beneath a pile of discarded cables and folders, the radio. Old, rusted, a relic from the 1970s. Its dials were cracked, its speaker half-broken, and yet it was on, hissing, muttering something beneath the static. James took a step closer. The radio hissed, then cleared, and a voice, warbled and stretched, pushed through. "James!" James froze. He looked around the office, heart hammering. No one was there. He leaned in. The radio crackled again, like it was struggling to speak. "James, why did you come back?" His stomach twisted. He hadn't been here before. Had he? "James, you forgot something." James stepped back, his breath shallow. The radio wasn't plugged in. The building had no working electricity. And yet, the dials were moving, turning on their own. The station shifted, landing on a low, distant hum. And then, the air changed. A sudden pressure filled the room. The hairs on James' arm stood up. It was as if something had just entered. He turned. The cubicles were different. The office wasn't abandoned anymore. Desks were neat. Computers hummed with power. The coffee cup that had been dry and cracked was now steaming. And the air was filled with the sounds of typing. People were working, but they weren't real. He could see them, blurry figures, faces indistinct, moving, shuffling through the office like ghosts. And then, one of them looked at him. Her head turned slowly, eyes dark wide. Her mouth moved, but her voice came from the radio. "James, you were here. The night it happened." His breath caught. "You don't remember?" James stumbled backward. This wasn't possible. The blurry figures stopped typing. Every single one of them turned toward him, silent, watching. The woman stood up. Her form shimmered, flickering like a broken TV screen. "Come back, James." The room flickered. James blinked, and the office was empty again. James's hands were shaking. The radio sat motionless, silent. Had he imagined it? Then he saw something on the desk. A file. A folder with his name on it. James hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, He reached down and opened it. His blood ran cold. Inside, a termination letter, dated 5 years ago, for James Holloway, fired after an incident on the 7th floor. His mind reeled. Had he worked here? He tried to remember. A headache spiked through his skull. And then, from behind him, the radio spoke again. "Look behind you." James whirled around. The office was gone, but the woman was still there. Clear now, solid, and her face was his. A perfect reflection of himself. Except her eyes were empty. Her lips curled into a smile as she whispered, "You already came back, James." The lights flickered. The floor fell away. And the last thing James heard was the radio, hissing, crackling, and laughing. The next morning, the building's security guard found the janitor's mop bucket in the lobby. But James was gone. No sign of him. No security footage of him ever entering the building. The only clue, a dusty old radio sitting on the 7th floor. Still whispering. Still saying his name. The last shift at Braybrook Market was always quiet. By the time midnight rolled around, the aisles were empty. The overhead music was reduced to a faint hum, and the only movement came from the night crew stocking shelves. For Danny, the night shift was routine. He'd been working at the store for almost 2 years, and he knew every corner of the place. But that night, something was off, because that was the night his coworker vanished, and no one else seemed to remember him. Danny had always gone along with Kyle. They weren't exactly friends, but when you worked the same graveyard shift together, you got used to each other's presence. Kyle was tall, quiet, always listening to music through one earbud while stocking shelves. At around 2 a.m., Kyle looked at Danny, muttered something about grabbing more inventory, and walked toward the back room. Danny didn't think much of it, until he realized Kyle never came back. At first, Danny figured Kyle was just slacking off. Maybe he got distracted on his phone or went outside for a smoke. But after 15 minutes, Danny went to check. He pushed open the backroom door, stepping into the dimly lit storage area. Shelves of canned goods, pallets of soda. No Kyle. "Hey man," Danny called out, walking deeper inside. Silence. A cold draft crept through the air. Then he noticed something weird. Kyle's scanner gun was still on the table, and his work vest was hanging on a rack, like he'd walked in and never planned to leave. Danny felt a chill creep up his spine. Something wasn't right. He left the back room and found Erica, the shift supervisor, at the registers. "Hey, have you seen Kyle?" he asked. She frowned. "Who?" Danny blinked. "Kyle, the dude who works frozen foods. He went to the back like 15 minutes ago." Erica's expression didn't change. "We don't have a Kyle working tonight, Danny." Danny laughed, but it came out shaky. "What are you talking about?" "I just talked to him." Erica just shook her head. And that's when Danny felt the first prickle of dread. Like something was very, very wrong. Danny stormed to the security room. He didn't care if he got in trouble. He needed to see the footage. He rewound the security tapes to when he and Kyle had been stocking shelves. And his stomach dropped. There was only Danny. Kyle was gone. It was like Danny had been talking to himself. Like Kyle had never been there at all. Danny's breath came shallow. His hands trembled as he rewound further. Nothing. Kyle wasn't in the break room. He wasn't on the schedule. His locker was empty. And when Danny tried to check the employee records, Kyle's name wasn't there. Danny pulled out his phone in a panic. Kyle's number was still in his messages. "Danny, dude, where did you go?" No response. He scrolled up to their last conversation. Days of texts. Conversations about work schedules, late-night horror movies, and complaining about customers. And then the texts started disappearing, one by one, like someone was deleting them in real time. Danny's heart pounded. Kyle's contact name blinked out. Then his number. And then Danny's phone vibrated. One new message. From unknown. "Don't look for me." Danny ran back to the storage room. There had to be something there. Some clue. The second he stepped inside, the air felt wrong. Colder. Thicker. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed. Then, a new door. It was in the far back, past the loading docks. A metal door, chipped and rusted. And Danny was 100% sure it hadn't been there before. His breath turned shallow. A low hum filled the air. And from the other side of the door came a sound. A whisper. "Help me." Danny's fingers hovered over the handle. Everything in his gut told him not to open it. But then, bang, something slammed against the other side, hard enough to shake the walls. Danny stumbled back, and then the door ripped open. Inside was only darkness. Cold, silent, empty. But just before Danny turned to run, a hand shot out, pale, too long, fingers curling toward him. Danny screamed and staggered back. The door slammed shut, and then it was gone. The wall was smooth. No door, no Kyle, no proof it had ever existed. Danny didn't sleep that day, didn't tell anyone, because who would believe him? The next night, he came back to work, and that's when he saw him. A new guy, same height as Kyle, same department, same job, but his name tag read something else. Michael. And when Danny asked him about Kyle, Michael just smiled. Who's Kyle? Danny never worked the night shift again, but sometimes, late at night, he'd wake up to his phone buzzing. A single message. No number, no name, just the same 3 words. Don't look for me. The phone rang at exactly midnight. At first, Melissa barely registered the sound. She had been working at the Riverside Inn for almost a year now, and the graveyard shift was always the same, long, boring, and eerily quiet. But that night, something felt different. She glanced at the old-fashioned landline on the front desk. The red light flickered. Who even calls this late? She muttered. She picked up the receiver. Front desk, how can I assist you? Silence. Then, a voice. Hello, I need some help. There's someone outside my door. The voice was soft, feminine, but there was something off about it, like a faint echo, a delay between words. Melissa straightened. Which room are you in, ma'am? A pause. Then, room 306. Melissa felt a prickle of unease. That was impossible. Room 306 had been empty for years. Melissa hesitated before checking the system. Sure enough, no one had checked into room 306. The last registered guest had been 2 nights ago. It was currently vacant. She swallowed hard. Ma'am, are you sure you're in room 306? She asked carefully. A pause. Then the woman whispered, Please, I don't want to die. The line clicked off. Melissa felt a cold wave of fear rush over her. She grabbed her master key card and stepped away from the desk. She had to check. She had to know. The 3rd floor was silent. The carpet muffled her footsteps as she approached room 306. The door was closed. No signs of forced entry. No lights spilling from beneath the crack. Melissa raised a shaky hand and knocked. Hello, ma'am. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. Her fingers tightened around the key card. She swiped it. A soft beep. The door unlocked. Melissa took a deep breath and pushed inside. The air inside was cold. Not just AC cold, it felt wrong. Stale, heavy, like stepping into a place that hadn't been touched in decades. The bed was neatly made. No lagi. No signs of anyone inside. Melissa stepped forward, heart pounding. Then she saw it. The rotary phone on the nightstand. Off the hook, like someone had just been using it. Her breath hitched. Slowly, she reached out. A sharp thud sounded behind her. Melissa spun around. The closet door was ajar, and inside the darkness, something moved. Melissa stumbled back. The closet door creaked open wider, and that's when she saw it. A figure, a woman standing in the shadows, her face barely visible. She wore an old-fashioned dress, her hair falling in loose waves. Her eyes hollow. Melissa's breath came shallow. Ma'am. The woman tilted her head. Then, she stepped forward. Melissa's body locked up. The woman reached out. Her lips moved. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, You shouldn't be here. The lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. Melissa stumbled back into the hallway, gasping for air. The second she stepped out, the lights snapped back on. Room 306 was normal again. No strange woman. No sign that anyone had ever been inside. Melissa ran back to the front desk and pulled up the guest history. She searched the last recorded occupant of room 306. And then, her stomach dropped. The woman who had last checked into room 306 had done so exactly 20 years ago, and she had never checked out. Melissa's hands shook as she scrolled through the records. The woman's name was Eleanor Gray. She had checked in on March 17, 2005. And then, the record simply stopped. No checkout, no further bookings, just an empty file. Melissa's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, the phone rang again. The same line. She froze. Slowly, she picked up the receiver. "Front desk," she whispered. Silence. Then, a soft exhale, and a whisper. "I never left." The line went dead. The next morning, Melissa dug deeper. She found an old newspaper article, and when she saw the headline, her blood ran cold. "Missing woman last seen at Riverside in case still unsolved." The grainy black and white photo showed a young woman, with loose waves of dark hair, wearing an old-fashioned dress. It was her, the woman from the closet, the one who never checked out. Melissa's stomach churned, because if Eleanor had disappeared 20 years ago, then who had called her last night? Melissa never told anyone. But after that night, strange things started happening at the Riverside Inn. Guests in room 306 would complain of cold spots, whispering in the dark, the closet door opening on its own. But the worst part? Every year, on March 17th, the front desk phone would ring. At exactly midnight. No caller ID, no record of the number. And when Melissa finally picked up, all she heard was, "Help me." The Silver Lantern was never busy after midnight. Most of the regulars had already stumbled home, leaving Nick alone behind the bar, wiping down glasses and counting the minutes until closing. The old place had been around for decades, its wooden floors creaky, its walls lined with faded photos of long-dead patrons. But tonight, something felt off. The air was too still. The neon sign outside flickered, casting weird shadows on the mirrored wall behind the bar. Nick glanced at his own reflection, and then he stopped, because the man in the mirror wasn't moving. Nick's heart stuttered. He lifted his right hand. His reflection lifted its left. He leaned forward. The reflection hesitated, then leaned too late. A cold chill crept up his spine. It had to be a trick of the light. Maybe he was tired, seeing things. Nick rubbed his eyes and glanced back. The man in the mirror was grinning. Nick wasn't. Nick took a step back. The grin in the mirror widened. Teeth too sharp. Lips stretched too far. His stomach turned. This wasn't his reflection. Something else was in the glass, and it was watching him. Nick's hands shook as he reached for his phone. He needed to call someone, tell them what he was seeing. But when he glanced back at the mirror, the reflection was normal again. No strange movements. No eerie grin. Just him. Nick let out a shaky laugh. "I need sleep." But just as he turned away, the reflection winked at him. Nick hadn't moved at all. The next night, it happened again. This time worse. Nick was closing up when he caught his reflection staring. Not following his movements, just watching. Like it had a mind of its own. He waved a hand. The reflection stayed still. Then, with slow, deliberate motion, it turned away. But Nick hadn't moved. The reflection was looking at something behind him. Nick's blood ran cold. Because he was alone, Nick stopped checking the mirror. But every night it called to him. It started whispering, low, unintelligible words muttering through the glass. And then, one night, the whispers became clear. "Let me out." Nick slammed a cloth over the mirror, heart hammering. But when he pulled it away, the reflection was still smiling. And its lips moved, even though Nick stayed shut. "You're the reflection now." Nick stopped working nights. But the mirror followed him. His reflection in windows, car mirrors, even puddles, always just a little off. He'd turn away, and it would linger, smiling, waiting. Then, one night, he saw something that made his blood freeze. As he brushed his teeth, he watched his reflection in the bathroom mirror. And for a split second, he blinked, but his reflection didn't. Nick staggered back. The man in the mirror wasn't him anymore. It was something else, and it was trying to take his place. Nick refused to look into any mirrors. He smashed the one in his apartment. He avoided anything that showed his own face. But late one night, as he walked past the Silver Lantern, he saw it, the bar's mirrored wall, and standing there on the other side of the glass was him, or at least the thing that looked like him, and it smiled. Then, in one smooth motion, it lifted a hand and waved. Nick turned and ran, because deep down he knew one day he wouldn't be fast enough. And when that day came, the wrong reflection would take his place. Caleb hated the graveyard shift. The security booth was cramped, the fluorescent lights flickered, and the 16-monitor setup bathed the room in a cold glow. His job was simple: watch the cameras, report anything suspicious. But nothing ever happened at Ridgewood Storage Facility. At least, not until that night. Because at exactly 3:12 a.m., something changed. When the cameras glitched, and when the feed returned, someone was standing in the storage lot, facing the camera, and they were staring directly at him. Caleb froze. The figure stood between rows of storage units, unmoving. Its face was hidden in shadow. Caleb leaned forward, trying to see who it was. There were no customers allowed after midnight. And yet, there they were, watching. Caleb grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Caleb. We got an intruder on Lot C. I'll check it out." He switched to the exterior cameras. But when the next camera loaded, the figure was gone, like it had just vanished. Caleb's pulse quickened. There was no way they could have run out of sight in seconds. Yet the lot was empty, or so he thought, because when he looked back at the monitor showing his own booth, the figure was standing outside his window. Caleb spun around. Nothing. The parking lot outside was empty. But when he turned back to the monitor, the figure was still there, still staring. It was like it only existed on the cameras. Caleb's breathing hitched. Then, slowly, the figure began to move. It stepped closer, until its face became visible, and Caleb felt his stomach drop, because the figure was him. Caleb's own face stared back at him. Same uniform, same tired eyes, same expression of pure fear. But there was something wrong. The other Caleb's eyes were too dark, his mouth too wide, and as he watched, the doppelganger smiled. A slow, unnatural grin. Then, without warning, the screen glitched, and the figure was gone. Caleb sat frozen, heart hammering. He grabbed his flashlight, shoved open the security door. The night air was still. No sign of anyone. Then, a sound. Footsteps. From inside the main hallway. Caleb swallowed hard. The only person in the building was him. So who was walking inside? Caleb turned back to the monitors, flipped through the hallway feeds. There, motion detected. Someone was in storage hall A, moving slowly, deliberately. Caleb's grip on the radio tightened. "Who's there?" No answer. The figure stopped walking. Then, on the screen, it turned its head and looked straight at the camera. Straight at him. Caleb backed away from the monitors. The figure in the footage began moving again, step by step, closer, until it was standing in front of the security booth. Caleb whipped around, still empty. But then, a soft click, the security door unlocked by itself, and it began to open. Caleb stumbled backward. His radio crackled, and a voice, his own voice, spoke through the static. "Let me in." Caleb's breath hitched. His eyes darted to the monitors. The other Caleb was now inside the room, standing right behind him. But when Caleb turned around, nothing was there. Caleb's vision blurred. His skin felt wrong, like he wasn't in his body anymore, like something else was pulling him away. He looked back at the monitors. The other Caleb was now sitting in his chair, smiling. And then, the screen flickered. For a split second, Caleb saw his own reflection in the glass. But he wasn't in the security booth. He was inside the camera feed, trapped, watching, as the wrong Caleb turned to the camera and switched it off. Hospitals never sleep, especially not St. Augustine's. Sam had worked the graveyard shift for nearly 2 years, moving bodies to the morgue, filing paperwork, and making sure everything stayed in place. It wasn't a fun job, but it was quiet, until tonight. Because when he wheeled in the last body bag of the night, something was wrong. One of the morgue drawers was slightly open, and it wasn't supposed to be. Sam frowned. He checked the logbook. That drawer, #19, was supposed to be empty, but it was open just a crack. Cold air seeped out. The morgue's fluorescent lights buzzed. A metallic smell hung in the air, stronger than usual. Sam reached for the handle, and as soon as his fingers touched the metal, a sound came from inside, a soft, shifting movement, like something was turning over. Sam's stomach twisted. He had seen bodies twitch before, muscle spasms, gases shifting, but this felt deliberate. He pulled the drawer open. Inside lay a body, a man, pale and lifeless, wrapped in a morgue sheet. His skin was gray, his eyes closed. Sam flipped through the logbook again. Nobody had been assigned to this drawer. No paperwork, no ID, but somehow he was here. Sam reached for the toe tag, but as soon as he touched it, the air turned ice cold. The lights overhead flickered, and then the name on the tag changed. It had been blank a second ago, but now it said Samuel Carter. Sam's own name. Sam's breath hitched. A cold, creeping dread crawled up his spine. His hand shook. The morgue was silent. But then, the body's eyes snapped open, and it stared directly at him. Sam stumbled back. His heartbeat thundered. The body didn't move, didn't breathe. It just watched. Then, a sound, soft, hoarse, a whisper from the body's unmoving lips. "You're in the wrong place." Sam felt his blood run cold, because the voice was his own. Sam backed toward the door. His fingers fumbled for the light switch. He needed to get out, but as soon as he flipped the switch, darkness. The morgue lights died, and the air turned freezing. A low, creaking sound filled the room, not from the drawer, but from behind him, like another morgue door was opening. Sam whirled around. The morgue was pitch black, but he heard it, the slow, dragging metallic scrape. One by one, the drawers were unlocking, sliding open. Sam's chest tightened. He reached for his flashlight, flicked it on, and froze, because every single morgue drawer was now slightly open, except one, his own, drawer number 19. Sam stumbled toward the exit. He needed to leave now, but then his flashlight flickered over the steel autopsy table, and he saw his own reflection, except it wasn't him. The face staring back had sunken eyes, pale, lifeless skin. It was the corpse in the drawer, and it was smiling. Sam's breath came shaky. The air in the morgue grew heavier. Then, he heard it. A voice. His own, but not quite right. "Time to trade places." Sam's body went rigid. A sudden, invisible force slammed into him, knocking him backward. His head hit the metal slab. The world blurred. The last thing he saw was the morgue drawer sliding shut, with him inside, and the corpse, standing outside, wearing his face. As the cold darkness swallowed him, Sam realized the truth. He was never supposed to leave, and now, something else had taken his place. Sam's breath hitched. The air inside the morgue drawer was stifling, pressing against his chest like an invisible weight. He pounded against the metal walls. "Let me out." His voice came back in a muffled echo. No one would hear him down here. No one would even know he was here, except for the thing that had taken his place. Outside, beyond the cold metal walls, Sam could hear footsteps, soft, deliberate, moving toward the exit, and then the door to the morgue opened and closed, leaving him alone. Sam's lungs tightened. He forced himself to breathe. There had to be a way out. His fingers scrambled against the smooth interior. No handle, no release. The air inside felt thinner, colder, like the life was being drained out of him. Then, from the darkness, a new sound, a slow, scraping noise, like nails dragging against metal. Not from outside, from inside the drawer, right next to him. Sam's pulse thundered. He wasn't alone. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, like something was waking up. Then, a whisper, so close it felt like it was inside his own head. "You took your place. Now it's your turn." The walls shuddered. The air turned freezing, and something brushed against his leg. Something cold, something moving. And then, in the blackness, fingers curled around his wrist. Sam screamed. He kicked at the darkness, pulled away, but the hand tightened. It dragged him deeper. The morgue drawer should have been small, a tight, enclosed space. But suddenly, it felt endless, like the drawer had become a tunnel, a passage leading to somewhere else. And that thing, it was pulling him through. Sam's back hit the ground, but not the morgue floor, not anywhere he recognized. The air was thick with fog. A heavy, endless darkness stretched in every direction. And all around him, more drawers, hundreds of them, stacked into the sky, opening and closing, whispers leaking out like trapped voices. Sam staggered to his feet. He wasn't in the hospital anymore. He was somewhere else. A place meant for those forgotten, for the ones that had been taken. And now, he was one of them. Sam's breath came fast. There had to be a way out. He turned and froze. A morgue drawer stood open in front of him. Inside was himself, but not him. His corpse, lifeless, gray, eyes closed, waiting. The whispers rose, calling him back. And Sam knew the truth. To escape, someone else had to take his place, just like the thing that had stolen his face. Sam turned his head. In the distance, another figure moved in the fog. Lost, confused, a new arrival, someone else, another soul waiting to be claimed. Sam looked back at the morgue drawer, at the toe tag, and saw his name disappear. The letters shifted, fading. Then, a new name appeared, the name of the person wandering in the dark. Sam stepped back as the drawer slid shut, sealing the new arrival inside. And as the fog began to lift, Sam smiled, because now he was free and someone else was trapped. Nate hated the graveyard shift. Nothing good ever happened at a gas station past midnight. Drunk customers, creepy strangers, the occasional shoplifter. But worst of all, the silence. It wrapped around the gas station like a heavy blanket, broken only by the hum of a neon open sign in the window and the occasional static from the old security radio. Nate checked the time. 2:37 a.m. 3.5 hours left. And then the bell above the door jingled. A customer had walked in, and from the moment Nate saw him, he felt something was off. The man wasn't anyone Nate recognized. Tall, thin, wearing a long, dark coat. His face was pale. Too pale. Almost gray. He didn't go to the coolers for a drink. Didn't glance at the snack aisle. He just walked, slowly, deliberately, straight to the counter. And then he smiled. A too wide smile. "Good evening, Nate." Nate stiffened. He hadn't said his name. He wasn't wearing a name tag. So how did this guy know him? Nate forced a polite nod. Hey, what can I get you?" The man tilted his head. His eyes were dark. Too dark. "You've worked here for 3 years, haven't you?" Nate's stomach tightened. He hadn't seen this guy before in his life. "How do you know that?" The man just chuckled. A slow, rasping sound. "I know everything about you." He leaned forward. "Like how you always eat a Snickers bar at 3 a.m., but only when no one's watching." Nate's blood ran cold. Because that was true. He did do that. But no one should have known. The gas station felt smaller. The air thicker. Nate swallowed hard. "Look, man, I don't know who you are, but..." "And your sister," the man interrupted. Nate's breath hitched. "She still keeps that old teddy bear you gave her when she was 6. Asterisk. The one missing an eye." Nate felt like he'd been punched. His sister. She lived 2 states away. That bear? She still had it. But how did this stranger know? His voice came out shaky. "Who the hell are you?" The man just grinned wider. "A friend." The man finally moved. He reached into his coat. Nate flinched, but the man only pulled out a $1 bill and placed it on the counter. "A coffee, please." Nate hesitated. Every instinct screamed to run, but he forced himself to move. Poured a cup, placed it on the counter. The man picked it up, didn't sip it, just held it, like it wasn't even about the drink, like he was waiting for something else. Nate's hand shook as he grabbed his phone, opened the security app. The cameras should have caught everything. He scrolled to the footage and froze, because the front door never opened. The man wasn't on the video at all. The footage showed Nate alone, talking to no one. His stomach dropped. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. But then the man spoke again. "That won't help you, Nate." The coffee in the man's hand had gone cold, but he still held it, still stared. "I remember when you first met me," he said softly. Nate's jaw tightened. "I've never met you before in my life." The man shook his head. "Not yet." Nate felt his chest tighten. A memory surfaced. A childhood memory. A night when he was 7. The time he got lost in the woods behind his house. How he cried in the dark, until someone found him. A tall man, wearing a long, dark coat. No, that wasn't possible. That man had been a stranger. Hadn't he? Nate's fingers trembled. He grabbed the receipt printer. It should show the time of purchase. The proof that this had really happened. He pulled the slip from the machine, looked at the date, and felt his stomach drop. Because the receipt was wrong. The date? 12 years ago. The same night, he got lost in the woods. And below it, a single line of text. "See you again, Nate." Nate's breath hitched. He looked up. The man was gone. The bell above the door had never rung. The coffee cup was still on the counter, but it was full, untouched, as if the man had never existed. The gas station was silent. The neon lights buzzed. Outside, the night was empty. Nate's phone vibrated. A single notification. A new message. No number. No contact name. Just one phrase. "You should have stayed lost, Nate." And outside the station, beyond the glow of the streetlights, a tall, dark figure watched, waiting,